When I was a kid, I saw something that terrified me. It was a YouTube video, and simply thinking about it would keep me up at night. It was dark, gruesome, and horrifying. To this day, when I stare into the darkness, I can almost hear its wretched voice calling out to me in the dead of night.
I'm friends with my dad.
When I first watched Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared as a kid, it's safe to say that I was traumatized. I cried like the little baby dipshit I was, and anytime one of those new videos would show up in my recommended, I'd feel my heart sink. There was just something about that feeling of betrayal and helplessness I got when that felt puppet show turned dark that just stuck with me for my entire childhood. For the longest time, it was my number one fear, and I never wanted to watch it again. But then one day that changed. I believe it was around the time when number 5 came out, but I suddenly felt like returning to that cursed series that left me scarred. Time had passed, and I was an older lad by then, and I couldn't help but give in to my morbid curiosity. What I discovered was that those videos were actually really dope. I overcame my childhood fear and gained a new appreciation for the artistic expression and overall mystery surrounding Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. And now it's one of my favorite things on the internet, period. What can be learned from Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is that the scary side of YouTube is where some of the most creative and interesting content on the platform lies. I should mention that I'm not like a studied professional when it comes to this topic at all. This is a very, very deep rabbit hole, and there's plenty of people who know more than me. This isn't meant to be an iceberg video or anything. Instead, think of it more like a general overview of my experience with all things spooky on YouTube, the good and the bad. And hopefully by the end, you'll understand why I think this side of YouTube is so important. Let's get the obvious out of the way first, creepypastas. There's such an overabundance of creepypasta channels, yet in my opinion, the majority of it suffers from an unfortunate diagnosis I like to call not very good disease.
What the hell?
It's funny because this is like the only genre of video, aside from maybe ASMR, that requires you to have a very specific voice. It needs to be dark and brooding, but not over the top, yet so many channels just completely missed that mark. And besides, at the end of the day, these videos are only really as good as the original creepypastas that they take from, so it's hard to say that they're really offering a whole lot of originality. That's not to say it's all bad though. When it's done right, it can be magnificent. With the right voice, a solid story, and just enough ambience, they can be super immersive. And even when they are just straight up bad, usually it swings back around to being so bad it's good.
Says the lady at the desk. Jeff's mom looked down to see the black dress pants and white hoodies her son wore.
The black dress pants.
Either way, it makes for a fun way to piss your pants from laughter or just genuine fear. I recommend checking out the Dark Somnium for super high quality podcast type storytelling. Well, they do have an interesting art style.
However,
these are all original drawings?
I think so, yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
There's a different kind of video that tends to be my personal choice, and I don't really know what to call them, so we'll just call them spooky video essays. Rather than just reading a pre-existing creepypasta, these creators present their own original essays delving into various disturbing mysteries or stories from around the internet. And most of the time, they involve real events. This could range from true crime to paranormal mysteries and so on. I like these kinds of videos because I'm a pussy and I prefer having another person explain the scary shit rather than me have to discover the scary shit firsthand. Also because a lot of these topics tend to be very expansive, and these videos do a good job at packaging everything in a more digestible way. I imagine the amount of research that's needed to make this type of content is insane, so I have a lot of respect for these creators just on that basis alone. My absolute favorite channel of this genre has to be Nexpo. His quality is top-notch, and he manages to be incredibly informative while retaining that spooky, mysterious atmosphere. On a cold October night, throw on one of his videos, go blankie mode, and you're in for a whole lot of wet undies. As much as I love these channels, I do have a major problem with them. When it comes to horror content I personally enjoy, I definitely lean more towards like the paranormal and unexplainable mysteries and whatnot. The real world and true crime stuff, I don't really mess with at all. Despite how much I love Nexpo, I had to stop watching his disturbing stuff from around the internet series because it strayed too far into that camp for me. I just completely lose interest when you start talking about real tragedies. The whole reason I watch these videos is because I want to be scared, but when they do stuff like this, I just end up feeling depressed and it usually ruins my night. It just doesn't sit right with me, especially when you consider how these channels are profiting from these tragedies in a way. And for a lot of the smaller spooky channels, it becomes a race to see who can discover the most recent or obscure incident to cover. It's actually pretty fucked up if you think about it. That's why I've just always preferred the harmless mysteries, lost media, and paranormal type stuff. Listen, I'm a dumb little dipshit and I just want my goblin videos. Is that too much to ask? That's it. Bring out the goblins. Where are the goblins at? We need more goblins in here. There's not enough goblins. Unfortunately, there seems to be a severe lack of goblin analog horror series on YouTube, but that doesn't mean the genre is not worth mentioning. If you've never heard of it, imagine found footage horror through the lens of 80s and 90s nostalgia. These videos commonly emulate old technology in broadcasting, thus the analog part of the name, and more often than not, they come in the form of a series. When it comes to actually being scary, I'm gonna be honest, it can be pretty hit or miss with these. Some knock it out of the park, and others just come across like they're trying too hard. But scariness aside, what I respect about this genre is the sheer ambition that's on display. These independent filmmakers are creating entire worlds with expansive lore just to make the viewing experience more immersive. There's a lot of overlap between analog horror and ARGs as well, so usually they come with scavenger hunts of unlisted videos and hyperlinks to explore beneath the surface. Giving viewers the ability to interact with the horror they're watching makes for such a unique experience that, outside of video games, is only really possible on something like YouTube. You're no longer watching a movie about some dude who finds a haunted VHS. Now you're the dude who finds the haunted VHS. Not exactly a hot take, but I think Local 58 does this the best, by far. It's high quality, easy to believe and get immersed in, and is honestly pretty chilling at times. Chris Straub clearly knows what he's doing.
The whole idea of this video is he discovered it somehow by going into a hole in the ground. And this mall is somehow still here, but it's completely underground, and obviously there's no electricity.
There's been several moments where I've completely forgotten that this is CGI.
Not real.
Yeah. And the fact that he had to record audio for this and everything and make all the sound design sound real. 90% of the time, when you find something terrifying on YouTube and wonder to yourself, what the hell is this? Within a few seconds, you'll realize, oh, it's an art project. I guess the definition of art is subjective, but for the sake of this segment, I'm just going to be talking about web series that are produced to tell a fictional story. You already know Salad Fingers, you already know Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, but what I'd really like to talk about is one of my favorite web series, Alan Tutorial. If you know Alan at all, it's probably for his classic 2012 tutorial, How to Pick Up a Blue Chair Off the Ground, in which he teaches you how to pick up a blue chair off the ground.
Girl, how to pick up a chair if it falls down.
For a while, the rest of his content consisted of this type of useless and nonsensical tutorial, much to the confusion of anyone who happened to come across them. But then, things only started to get weirder. He already seemed to be a pretty eccentric character who was incredibly invested in making his tutorials, but people started to get concerned when he continued making them even after getting locked out of his own house and wandering aimlessly in the woods. He went from just being some quirky tutorial guy to possibly being a literal insane person.
Today I'll do a new tutorial what to do if you get locked out of your room. How to kill.
I mean, if I saw this without any context,
I'd be concerned.
I would be concerned for this man, yeah. Who is this guy? Is he okay? His viewers couldn't help but question whether this was all some sort of joke or legitimate vlogs documenting a man's descent into madness. To make a long story short, he eventually gets kidnapped by an anonymous person and is kept in an all-white room to create tutorials and newscasts in exchange for money. As his mental health deteriorates, so do his surroundings until it's clear that he is completely alone. His captor has left him to rot in this godforsaken place, and he reaches the peak of his insanity, mumbling incoherent sentences in a darkly lit and disturbingly corrupted cell. In his last video, he successfully breaks through the wall and escapes, never to upload again. So yeah, believe it or not, it wasn't real. It was a satirical dark comedy series created by the genius artist Alan Resnick, who is known for doing other equally strange and disturbing short films that you may have seen on Adult Swim. But I just want you to imagine for a moment. It's 2012. You happen to find one of Alan's tutorials on YouTube by chance. It doesn't have a ton of views, but you're intrigued, so you click on it. You think it's funny or weird, so you decide to subscribe and see where it goes. Then one day, you just see this.
Say she's free.
I believe this is the genius of the Alan tutorial series. It takes advantage of the platform of YouTube to teeter between fiction and reality in a really unique way. Was it all just a series of skits, or was this man genuinely losing his mind? In hindsight, it may seem just goofy, but imagine watching all of it unfold in real time without all the answers that we have today. It must have been disturbing then, but now, it's genius. The scariest thing to me is the fact that this dude had to make that, you know? He had to get himself in that environment and film that, probably alone. And it's like, I don't know what kind of headspace you have to be in to make that. But
a very, very creative one.
I was gonna say, you have to be a very like passionate artist, very passionate and devoted to your craft to make that. Finally, there's one connecting factor at the source of all that is spooky, and that's the unknown. As creepy as all of the previous examples have been, you lose some of the immersion when you realize that this is just content made by some content creator with the sole purpose of spooking you. For me, what is truly terrifying is when things aren't so clear, when you can't clearly identify the creator or intention behind what you're watching. That lack of information and sense of mystery can trigger such a chilling response because we fear what we don't know. I still physically cannot watch I Feel Fantastic alone in my room at night because, I mean, one, it's just freaky, and two, we know very few details about the true story behind this video, and my mind can't help but obsess over the gaps in information. All we really know is that it was basically just made by some guy who likes making robots. And the fact that this video wasn't even intentionally made to be scary somehow just makes it scarier. Why did he sell DVDs of the video on his website? Why does it at one point just zoom into a very specific spot in the forest? That mystery is what elevates this type of video, in my opinion, and it's what keeps my pants flooded with piss. It's the same thing with that cursed soup video. People have dug up some information and have desperately strung together theories, but we still really don't know much of anything about its origin. Okay, so apparently people did actually figure out the whole story behind this one, but my point still stands. These videos are incredibly effective because in isolation, they lack context. And even after being explained away, I feel like the best ones are still able to capture that feeling of uncertainty. And in my opinion, nothing has done this better than a channel called Meat Sleep. Nothing makes me more uncomfortable than these videos. Unsettling and utterly unexplainable. And unexplainable not just because of the video's contents, but the video file itself. Be it a curse or just really clever computer tricks, but in a handful of Meat Sleep videos, something about the video file manages to cause a glitch in YouTube, where the video keeps playing even after it should be over.
Oh, fun.
I know there's probably some technical explanation for this, but if there is, I don't want to know about it. I like not knowing because it's precisely that uncertainty that makes this content magically terrifying for me. And even though they pretty much came out and said it was all an ARG, watching Meat Sleep's videos still gives me this sick feeling that I can't quite put my finger on. It's a combination of the bizarre imagery, mysterious story behind it all, and the manipulation of the format itself that makes it spine-chilling and totally one of a kind. So while this dark side of YouTube may be considered scary or disturbing, it should also be appreciated as so much more than just that. It deserves to be commended for its creativity and for pushing the limits of this relatively new art form. It's so great to see a passionate community reinvent what horror can be as a genre. On YouTube especially, it's easy to look around and feel like there's no life or spark of originality left. But if there's anywhere that imagination thrives, it's in the darkest corners, right where you least expect it. And now I'm gonna have to go to sleep and try my best not to think about this thing. Shit. If you're also gonna have trouble sleeping tonight, you should watch my video about comfort content. It's way more chill, I promise.